Hi, welcome to the Catholic Corner. I'm Monsignor Walter Nolan. Those of you who have probably watched our program for a while know that I'm a lover of our priests, and there's some great young men and some great priests that touch all of our lives. Today I have a special program with a beautiful, beautiful man, beautiful priest, and with an exceptional story. See, my guest today is a father of 3 sons. Might sound a little unusual to you, since our Catholic Church, our Catholic priests take a vow of celibacy. But Father James Grogan responded to the voice of God calling him to our priesthood after his beautiful wife of 25 years, Ellie, went to God's home in 2007. So many ways that God touches our lives, and I always believe that that's the story of our lives starts a lot before the maybe main impact of what happens to us. Father Jim was ordained a priest by our Bishop David O'Connell at the cathedral just this past June 6th, 2015. Ellie and Jim had 3 sons. Almost sounds like we could do a movie. They're now in their 20s, and they certainly support their dad, Father Jim's decision to become a Catholic priest. Father Jim has a great background in education. He has a master's and a bachelor's and a master's degree from St. Joe's University in Philadelphia, Villanova University. He also has a master's degree in pastoral theology from LaSalle University in Philadelphia, and a second master's degree in systematic theology from the seminary that he went to, Immaculate Conception, Seton Hall University, in 2014. Father Jim was previously ordained a deacon, a permanent deacon, for our diocese at St. Mary of the Assumption Cathedral in 2004 by Bishop Smith. Now, Dad, Father Jim, is assigned to Our Lady of Good Counsel Church in Moorestown, and that's where he had some of his home. That's where he found a lot of his blessing, and that's where he kind of started the great pilgrimage that the Lord put him on. Father Jim, welcome to the Catholic Corner.
Thank you. Thanks for having me here.
It's great. Really a great, great, great God story. Can you tell me a little bit about your life before you were ordained a priest?
Yeah, I was in the business world.
Uh-huh.
That first master's degree in computer science led me into the technology world, and I really was at the intersection of technology and business for most of my working career. Worked in the area of crisis management, helping companies as they understood how they were dependent on technology to prepare for what happens if it goes away. The fires, the hurricanes, the acts of God and acts of terrorism. So it was an interesting way to work with people who were facing crises. And in a sense, I'm still in the crisis business.
Little different way, we
Little
hope.
different, yeah.
Little different way. So you were married 25 years?
Mm-hmm.
Were you a New Jersey boy growing up?
Actually not.
Uh-huh.
I'm an import. I was a Philadelphia Catholic,
Mm-hmm.
as my good friend Monsignor Vaughn always reminds me, and Monsignor Mullally, who he's the Philadelphia Catholic. Monsignor Vaughn reminds me that he's not. But grew up in around the Philadelphia Archdiocese. My mom still lives outside of Philadelphia. Most of my siblings are in that area. I have a brother who's a priest in the Philadelphia Archdiocese, so that was kind of home. But I met a wonderful girl from Cinnaminson, and that's what brought the transition over to New Jersey. We got married in St. Charles Borromeo in Cinnaminson, and we lived in outside of Philadelphia on the Pennsylvania side for a couple of years. And then in 1984, moved back to Mount Laurel, a little bit closer to Ellie's folks as they were getting up in years. And that's where eventually we raised our sons. We're members of Our Lady of Good Counsel Parish, and was thrilled to be sent back there this past July. Surprised, but thrilled to be sent back to what really has become home for me for the last 30 years.
Well, that is terrific. So you were a permanent deacon in Moorestown?
Yes, I was ordained in 2004, and got to minister there and serve in that parish for about 10 years before entering into the seminary. So that we were very blessed to be actively involved with the ministering around the altars. It's interesting to me to see the differences in working with deacons now. We kid each other that as deacons, you never see the other guys working. We're always at different masses. So, now that I get to serve them as their parish priest, I get to see each of them, and it's a different kind of interaction with the guys who used to be just at a different mass on the same schedule as me.
Tell me a little bit about your great love with Ellie. I know you're married, I think, 25 years.
We're married for 25 years. We were blessed with a wonderful, wonderful marriage for all those years. Met her when she was a senior in college. Happened to attend the same college that my younger sister went to, and through lots of curious connections, we ended up meeting, and we fell in love very, very quickly. We're very blessed to, after she finished graduate school, we were moved over here to New Jersey. She grew up in Cinnaminson, St. Charles Borromeo, where my in-laws still live, which again is an interesting thing for a priest to have in-laws. But it's been a wonderful kind of time. She took ill in the year after I was ordained a deacon. So 2005, she was diagnosed with cancer and fought a brilliant battle with that, just remarkable. And was called to God in 2007, just at the point when my oldest son had just started college and my youngest son was about to start high school. So curious time for them as they were still teenagers, in essence, and moving into, what would the next phase of our lives be like.
It's always a hard time. Even as priests, we can see the beauty of God's home and the connections of here and there and the connections of even marriage. And there's, to me anyway, there's so much of a connection in the covenant of marriage and the covenant of God. And so we talk about marriage in so many different ways, and there's always that beautiful, hopefully talked about way of helping each other to achieve.
Oh, absolutely.
God's
absolutely.
Home,
And 25 years, you have a memory, a presence of that person in my life. So she's still with me today in so many regards.
Never go away.
She'll shape how, I face decisions and questions and things with my sons in particular, but really even in the parish. It's surprising to me, and maybe it shouldn't be, but it is, the number of people will come up to me and will begin a conversation, and part of their introduction is the reason they've come forward is because I was a married man,
Sure.
because I have sons.
Sure.
They want to have a conversation,
Sure.
and so there's a blessing to that.
That's a lot of people talk about their journey of life. I always like to talk about our pilgrimage of life,
Mm-hmm.
because a pilgrimage is a way of prayer and a way of life, and there's always the spiritual oases that come, and sometimes out of even some of the sadness parts of our lives comes a lot of joy, and another resurrection happens. And
Without question, having gone through that and have had the chance to minister to some other husbands who've lost their wives in similar circumstance, friends who have been going through the journey at the same time, we can have a kind of conversation about finding joy in the midst of the struggles that most people would look at us like we've got two heads. It's like, what do you mean? But the reality is you find a depth of joy that is really unparalleled. It's really special, and it can be a gift if we embrace it that way.
I have to ask you this question.
Go for it.
As you walk around your town of Moorestown, which is where you grew up and were married, not grew up, but you were married and raised children, I would assume that there are lots of people who knew you as, I guess, Jim or Mr. Jim or whatever you want to say, and now you wear a collar. Have you gone down the street and somebody did like a double take and say, "Whoa, what's this?"
Yes, yes. And, of the things that are probably the most challenging in my priesthood, the questions that people ask, the toughest thing that people try to figure out is, what do they call me? Friends who I've known for 30 plus years, they know me as Jim, and they want to call me Jim. And I said, that's fine. I said,
Sure.
In public, they sometimes want to make sure that they're getting Father Jim. I have one friend who I knew her when she was younger, did the wedding prep for her as a deacon, and she just can't get it right. My name is always going to be Mr. Grogan. I mean Father Jim. It's as if it's one word.
But there's
But that's
probably
fine.
some people that knew you, but maybe not have known that your wife passed away,
Hmm.
and now all of a sudden they see you in a collar and or see you at mass. They can
You know,
walk into church and
It's interesting. I probably get more of that from old friends through the business world
sure,
than from in the parish.
sure,
One of the blessings of being in that parish, Ellie was very, very active. So most of the parishioners, most of our old friends know the story. But I'll run into somebody on, using LinkedIn or something that they said, oh, well, what are you doing now? It's like, isn't that an interesting question? What am I doing now?
How about your boys? How? Listen, it's got to be hard for boys to lose a mother when they're teenagers and to go through that kind of a phase of their life, and then dad comes along and says, "And sons, I want to talk to you." And now you got another big conversation. How did that all go for you?
It went really well.
Yeah.
In some of the conversations, my oldest son had literally just started college. He was up at the University of Scranton for 1 week when his mom passed away. So coming home from that, and the way the university community, their campus ministry, reached out and came down and were part of the celebration of the funeral rites for Ellie, I knew he was with people who were looking out for him. And they really were remarkable in that regard, how well he was able to have people that were watching out for him, having conversations with him when he was figuring out what does this mean. I was blessed that the younger two guys were with me. They were at home, and my company at the time was extremely generous in understanding what I needed to do to adjust to being, dad and a single dad. So a lot of my business issues had been a lot of time traveling, and they curtailed that. They let me kind of keep a home base. It was good, and that's with or without their mom. That's a tough time going through high school, So my sons had a lot of growing up to do, and they had their bumps in the road just like any other high school kid, and figuring out what it is to be a teenager and what it is to argue with dad. Mom saved them a lot of times, She would, when I'd be ready to come down real hot and heavy on them, I'd remember what she would have told me, so that's a grace.
That's why I have an expression, and I hope it's true, that all mothers go right to heaven. Because,
Oh, yeah.
Mothers have something very special about them. Also, I'd love for you to just give me a little bit about that conversation when you went into your bosses, or maybe they knew you were a deacon, so there's got to be at least a knowledge that you're a spiritual man that way.
Knowledge as a spiritual man, but not where that was going. It's actually a very interesting conversation. The last year or so of my life, I had actually changed from one company to another and was an analyst. I did research and wrote on technology and traveled around the East Coast with that. Had a great boss. They were based in New York, and I went up to have lunch with our COO to tell him what was going to happen. And he talked to me later in the day. He had spoken to the chairman of the board, who responded like, "Well, I guess that's not a direction we can make a counteroffer to."
I was just thinking of that. What can they offer you?
Like, that's not going to work. So they were very understanding, that they knew that this for me was looking at what's the second half of my life like, and it was.
See, years ago in parts of Europe, they had the worker priest that would actually be a
Right.
priesthood, but
Right.
almost like our deacons are today in a sense. Now that you're ordained a beautiful priest and you're a beautiful dad, and you have 3 beautiful sons. How does that conversation? Has that conversation changed with them? You talk about others addressing you. What the heck?
They have some fun with that.
Yeah.
They wanted to kid about what they would call me. They were the only ones who were disappointed when I was sent to good counsel. And the reason was that they wanted to appear after Mass some Sunday, come up and give me a big 5 and say, "Yo, Dad, how's it going?" And wait for somebody to correct them. And I said, "We can't do that at good counsel because they know us. They know our story." But no, the boys are doing really well. They're young men. They're building their careers, and I'm very thankful that each of them are out working. My youngest son graduated from LaSalle University just 3 weeks before ordination, and had a job right away. So they're all building their careers, live relatively close by. Two of them are in Philly, one's up in Central Jersey, and so we get to see each other on a very regular basis, which is always comforting to me.
Now they're still single,
They are at this time.
so maybe someday you could marry your sons.
There's that
We'll
question,
celebrate-
right?
we'll
Yeah,
celebrate.
I don't want to put any pressure on them, but
No,
let's hope that one day we'll figure out what that means.
You're at Our Lady Good Counsel in Moorestown, which is a marvelous parish and marvelous church,
Yeah.
and priests there have done a great job and great school. Tell me, any surprises for you as a fully ordained priest now?
I think probably the biggest surprise as I look at that is how the ministry related to the Sacrament of Reconciliation is so integrated through what we do. The motto of our seminary at Immaculate Conception was Dispensers of the Mysteries of God, and it's looking at that sacramental life of a priest. And I just find this wonderful ministry of presence, as it were, when you have the continuity of being able to minister to someone in one of the nursing homes, and then a few weeks later you may be presiding at their funeral mass, and you've gotten a chance to know their family, or you go through the celebration of the Sacrament of Reconciliation, and you just see the joy in people, as we gather together and celebrate the Eucharist together in a different way. There's a tangible difference between being the deacon standing there at the right elbow of the priest and being able to actually celebrate the Eucharist with this community, and it's humbling. This past weekend was actually framed that for me in a unique way when we had our diocesan pilgrimage down to the National Shrine of Washington, because I realized as I was sitting up there after communion, just waiting as the distribution was continuing for the congregation, I had been there through the diocesan choir with my wife, ministering as a music minister. I had been there as a deacon offering anniversary blessings. The one year we did that in the side chapels. And here I was there as a priest. So, that place, which has such a sacred history of the church in the United States, the missionary church, the hardworking middle-class people who helped through donations for the past 100 years and more build that. Here I could map out the journey of my life, just through the every 2 years happening to be down there for the Diocese of Trenton. So that kind of framed it all for me.
It never ceases to amaze me in a beautiful way, Father Jim, the mercy of God, and just looking in people's eyes, and I guess they're looking at our eyes, and to see that there's a great love, of understanding, and a great love of kindness and compassion, and a great love of joy in all of those sacraments that you mentioned.
Oh, absolutely.
That really binds us together as human people, kind of on a road to divinity.
It's just remarkable.
And you just wish you could put more of that into ourselves and them, and everybody, to just feel those moments that you talk about, especially sometimes when somebody just looks at you and says, "Thank you," or "Bless you." And, I some of the moments of my life when you offer blessings, and then maybe out of a hospital room or wherever it happens to be, and someone says, "And bless you too, Father."
Right.
That to me is Christ being right present
It's humbling.
at that moment.
It is humbling, because so many times in
yeah.
those hospital rooms you realize you're the only person in the room who's not related to the person in that bed in the middle.
Yeah.
And yet you have the chance through our ministry to be gathered with people at this most intimate and sacred time in someone's life.
So you're a priest for 5 years. And it sounds to me like it's going very, very well.
5 months.
5 months, I'm sorry, 5 months. But any particular, days or any times that aspects that stand out in your mind already?
Well, one of the most interesting things was my dad passed away
Wow.
shortly after ordination, 11 days after ordination. And what made that interesting is that I was with him the weekend after my ordination when he had some issues, and he was the first person I offered the sacrament of the sick to. And so that will always frame my ministration of that sacrament to everyone else. Every time I offer that, I can remember that this began with my dad. And that became really special, and always will be. So that became a special moment, and I think that ties into the opportunities to this day. Literally on the way here this afternoon, I thought I was going to be early, and got an emergency call to stop at the nursing home first. And it's just it's a grace to be able to do that, to be with people at those sacred
And I
times.
can tell you as an older priest that will happen to you many, many times.
Yeah.
Many times.
Yeah.
And I know at times going to a hospital in the middle of the night, sometimes people say, well, how do you do that? I've never once, and I've done it often, never once came back and just not felt something of God's grace and thanked Him for allowing me to bring His love and bring His peace to somebody. So your family's responded very well. You sound like your sons and the impact on them it's all going very well.
It really is. My youngest son, one time we were entering into this conversation before I had actually left the working world, gone to the seminary. We talked about, family traditions. What are we going to do and how do we do that? And then Tom was, I think, 18 at the time. And he said, we'll form our own traditions when we get to that point. And that was brilliant wisdom.
I was going to say, that's a great son.
That was brilliant wisdom, because I was so overthinking it.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, before I've even entered the seminary, well, where are we going to meet for Thanksgiving dinner, 10 years from now? And he was like, we'll make our own traditions. And, there's tremendous wisdom in that, because we're finding that we do. As they become young men, they swing by my house in the evenings on a Sunday, and we can get together and have dinner, watch a ball game or something. We figure it out. It all seems to fit.
It's so amazing that the wisdom of children is so bright and so filled with expectations we don't really realize.
Didn't the Lord tell us that?
So now, yeah, He did. So now you're a vocation director also in Burlington County. Bishop O'Connell gave you that privilege. That's got to be exciting.
It is a privilege. It was a surprise. I was on the job at Good Counsel for about 2 weeks when the parish staff got all excited. It's like, oh, I was doing a funeral, and they said, you have to call Trenton right away. Like, well, who? Like, well, the bishop. And then he offered me the opportunity to assist in that capacity. And it's really a special role because, in particular for me, in vocations in Burlington County, we certainly have a number of grade schools, but Holy Cross High School is the only Catholic high school in the county. It's also where my wife had gone to school, where my 3 sons went to school, where I spent many, many times up there assisting as a deacon at liturgies. And through this role as the regional vocation director, I was able to reach out to the principal, and through him to Monsignor Ron Bakoven, to say, can I help? And it's just a way of letting the guys there and the women there know that a vocation is not a foreign thing. I was blessed to have 2 uncles who were priests. I have a brother who's a priest. So rectories and churches were not strange places. They were places you went to hang out with Uncle Jim and to visit your family. And so I think that one of the things that I hope to be able to bring by just being up at Holy Cross, once or twice a week perhaps, is that they just get comfortable saying, priests this is not a strange journey that we're on. It's not an unusual path. It's one that they should think of as one that's, I think, is filled with joy. I mean, I still think I'm getting away with something. This is a great job.
Just being with young people is a joy.
Yeah.
I spent a little bit of my time doing that, and I think you're very, very blessed in being able to do that and to have the gift to allow young men and young women and whatever vocations they search out.
That's right.
I mean, there's the great gift of God is that we can celebrate it. People that are single have a vocation. Married people have a great vocation. And I think we need each other, and we need each other to feed off of and to share Eucharist with. And I hope a lot of young people realize just the gift of God, and it is. When you're close to God, you found it in Ellie, you found it in the birth of your sons, you find it in being a deacon, you found it in a priesthood. I mean, I don't know what else God's gonna give you,
You know, well,
but don't close the book, you know?
well,
It's,
God's got a dream for each one of us.
yeah.
You know, we are His creation, and I truly believe He's got a dream for us, and we've got our own dreams. The challenge becomes, how do we find out what His is? Because His is the one that's going to unfold, unfold in beautiful ways. So, you know, that's the discernment of the vocation, whether it's to the single life, to the married life. For me, it was to the married life and then to the priesthood. You know, so you never know. You know, God opens lots of doors for us.
I just said recently, you know, the great baseball saint Yogi Berra, you know, one of his great expressions is, when you come to the fork on the road, take it. And I always said, I like to talk to Yogi and tell him, if there's only one fork, if you're really going to take it, and that's the way of Jesus.
That's
and
right.
It's His way in life and truth, and it comes back to the same road. What's so far in 5 months, your fondest memory so far in the priesthood?
The fondest memory. It's got to be being with the school kids.
Yeah.
You know, we're very blessed that we have the parish school there, and at the 9 o'clock mass, once school started in September, there's one class a day comes in to visit the classroom there. And as one of them was going out about 2 weeks ago, one of the little kids, I think it was probably third grade or so, said to me, "Father Jim, are you going to be at recess with us today?"
Yeah.
So that was, to me, a moment that said, you know, these kids who didn't remember me, they're so much younger than my boys. It's not like they knew me as Mr. Grogan.
Sure.
To them, I've always just been Father Jim. And they're excited to see me being able to just be present with them, to be their parish priest. And, you know, I couldn't ask for anything more.
The best thing about being a priest?
Best thing about being a priest is being able to celebrate the Eucharist.
Yeah.
Flat out.
Yeah.
You know, for me, especially that moment when, after the consecration, we hold up the host, we hold up the chalice and say, "Behold the Lamb of God." I've found myself just stuck at that point. You almost don't want to go to the next set of words, because there it is.
And
Behold
you know,
the Lamb
Father,
of God.
I'm sure it's for all of us too, at that moment, just when you're talking about. And then when you consume the host and the words that, you know, "I am also unworthy."
Right.
It just really penetrates the fact that it's only God's love and God's blessings that unites all of us into the oneness of His great love and blessing. Thank you, brother, and welcome. It's so
See you.
great to
Thanks
have
for
you.
having me here.
It's beautiful, beautiful man. If you're considering a vocation to the priesthood or like more information about the priesthood, you can contact our Diocese of Trenton Director of Vocations and Recruitment and House of Discernment. That's another great priest, Father Dennis Appledight, at 609-903-0784. Bless you.